Good morning, Yonatan.
All right. So just to go back a little bit to where we left off yesterday, and hopefully go back to a part where we're all equally on the diving board so that we're able to dive in together and not begin 9 feet underwater. We're trying to understand what is the Yontif of Chanukah and why there is an argument about when the Yontif happened. So, as we said yesterday, and we went there before also in the other talk of the Rebbe, there are two components to Chanukah. There is the miracle, the victory of war, and there is the miracle of the menorah. And the question is, as we learned earlier this week, what is the main component of the miracle? What's the main component of the holiday? And because Maimonides, because the Rambam says that we have to have festive meals on this holiday, not only do we say Hallel, not only do we light the menorah, we also have to have festive meals. That indicates that the Rambam is of the opinion that the holiday is about our physical salvation, and therefore a physical meal is necessary to celebrate our physical salvation. The other opinion is that the holiday of Chanukah is about the menorah, it's about our spiritual salvation, which is the lighting of the menorah is emblematic of a spiritual salvation. And therefore, the way to celebrate the holiday is by saying Hallel, by lighting menorah, it's by doing something spiritual. So that led us to believe that perhaps the argument about when the miracle happened is connected to this argument. There is an argument about whether the victory in war was on the 24th of Kislev or whether it was on the 25th of Kislev, whether it was part of the holiday or before the holiday. So according to the Rambam, who says that the victory of wars is part of the holiday, that fits very well with the holiday being on the 25th of Kislev, the day of victory. That's, according to the Rambam, that's when the victory happened, on the day of the first day of the holiday. The first day of the holiday is the day of the victory of war. That fits. The holiday is about the victory, and therefore it begins with the victory. That's when the holidays start. It starts on the day of the victory of war, because the holiday is about the physical salvation. And the other opinion, which says that the holiday is a spiritual holiday, so they say the victory of war happened before the holiday. The victory in the war happened on 24th of Kislev. That's when the victory happened. And the holiday begins when we light the menorah. The holiday begins when the Jewish people came back to the Beis Hamikdash and lit the menorah, and they now have a spiritual salvation. And therefore, the holiday begins on the 25th of Kislev, the day after the victory in war. Everything would fit really, really well if we did things that way. Remember when I was in yeshiva, we had great classes, not great, unbelievable classes from Rabbi Chiluk Kalmanson in Noah Zangesund. His name Chiluk sounds like the word to differentiate. He would always split a hair, and it would make things like so you find like slight differences in the text and be able to explain their deep meaning, a chiluk, a difference between one opinion and another opinion. But our chiluk, our difference between the Meiri and the Rambam doesn't really hold water. Doesn't really, this explanation, though it sounds so good, isn't really satisfying. And that reason is because just because the holiday, just because the victory happens on the first day of the holiday isn't really significant. And the reason is because, in other words, that doesn't indicate anything. Why? On Purim, the victory in battle is the day before the holiday. So in Chanukah also, just because you're celebrating the victory of war doesn't mean the victory has to happen on the holiday. You could be victorious the day before, on the 24th of Kislev, and yet celebrate that victory on the 25th of Kislev. Just like you did on Purim. On Purim, you had a victory in war on the 13th of Adar, and the celebrations is on the 14th of Adar. Or Shushan Purim, in the city of Shushan, they were only victorious in war on the 14th of Adar, and therefore the celebration was the day after. The day of rest was on the 15th of Adar. So just having the day of victory as day one of the holiday isn't a sign that the holiday is about victory. In fact, we find in the other holiday of Purim that the day of victory is not the day of the celebration. Day of victory is the day before the celebration. So there must be something else going on over here. It's not only the things that we've said till now isn't really correct, because just because the victory happens on the 25th of Kislev doesn't indicate that the holiday is about the victory. In the contrary, if it was about the victory, it should be in the 26th of Kislev. If the Rambam holds that the victory happened on the 25th, and we were to establish the holiday of Chanukah to be similar to that of Purim, so then the holiday should have begun on the 26th of Kislev. So the argument between the Meiri and the Rambam is a little deeper. Their argument isn't only about what is the holiday about, a spiritual holiday, is it a physical holiday? They're also arguing, is the holiday celebrated on the day after the victory, or is the holiday celebrated on the day of victory? And the reason they had that argument is because of something deeper about how they understand what the victory has to do with Chanukah. So they're not only arguing, again, about whether it's a physical salvation or it's about a spiritual salvation, they're also arguing regarding the victory in war itself. How do you celebrate that victory? Do you celebrate it on the day of the victory? Do you celebrate the day after the victory? The Rambam says, don't celebrate till the day after. The Meiri, the Rambam says, celebrate the day of victory itself. 25th of Kislev is the first day of Chanukah. According to the Meiri, no, celebrate the day after the victory of war. Don't celebrate the day of the victory itself. And the reason why they have this argument is because how they understand what the victory of war has to do with the rest of the holiday. Okay. So where we're going is, everyone agrees that the victory in war is part and parcel of Chanukah. Unlike the way we started, where we thought there was two opinions of that, and that they were mutually exclusive, and one valued the victory, one didn't value the victory. No, we have to say they both value the victory of war. The question is, what is the victory in war about? Is that a preparation for the miracle of the Menorah? And that is the ultimate expression of what the holiday is about? Or is the victory in war similar in its importance to the menorah? Does it also have exactly the same standing as the menorah? Is it just a preparation for the menorah?
What was that?
Huh?
Between that and what? Is it really?
Is it just a preparation for the miracle of the menorah? And miracle menorah is the ultimate celebration? Or is it tantamount to the menorah? Is it equal to the menorah? Okay. What's the basis of that argument? Why would you say it's a preparation? Why would you say it is the victory? It is the holiday itself. So we have to understand what a yontiv is in the first place and how Yom Tovim are celebrated. So we have to go even deeper, to get even more basic. So we have two different kinds of holidays. There are holidays that celebrate the result of what God does, and there are holidays that celebrate not just the result, but the method in which God saves us, in which God helps us. That, according to the Rambam, is a difference between Chanukah and Purim. On Chanukah and Purim equally, we were in danger, and God saved us. And Purim even more so, because the thrust of the decrees against the Jewish people in the holiday of Purim were about the Jewish body. Haman, like Hitler Yamach Shemai, wanted to kill all the Jewish people in one day. That's what it was about. It's about the Jewish body, and we celebrate the fact that we're still here, that Am Yisrael Chai. We're celebrating the consequence of what all that God did throughout the Megillah. We're celebrating the fact that we're here to stay, and that we have survived, and that God, through orchestrating a series of events, has allowed us to be here. So we're not celebrating any event per se along the way. We're celebrating the result. And the reason for that is simple, because all of the various events that happened along the way were not miraculous individually. The whole orchestration of all the events together, and looking at it as one mosaic, you see a miracle shining through, but you wouldn't point to the war as a miracle. The war wasn't in a miraculous way like it was in the story of Chanukah, where we have a few. I mean, we have Beis Betzalel trying to take over the Los Angeles police station. We have a few Jews against the entire Greek army. So there, the miracle isn't only the result. The miracle is in the war itself, and therefore we're not only celebrating the day after the victory. We're celebrating the victory itself. We're celebrating the victory in war itself. That is the day one of the holiday. The victory of war happens on 25th of Kislev, according to Rambam. And that's the first day we celebrate because that day is a day of a miracle. That day is a day, we're not celebrating the day, the fact that we could rest after the holiday and we're still here. We're celebrating the war itself because the war itself was a total miracle. So in Purim, we celebrate the day after the war because the war wasn't miraculous. We celebrate the result. We celebrate that we're here. On Chanukah, we celebrate the war itself. We celebrate the victory itself because the miracle was an out-and-out miracle. Follow so far?
How about crossing the Red Sea in Matan Torah? How does this also fall into line?
So on Pesach, we also celebrate the holiday on the day of the salvation itself, not the day after, because there was an open miracle as well on Pesach too. We celebrate the day itself that Hashem saved us, and we also, there was a mention this here, but we also celebrate the way Hashem saved us. That's why we eat matzahs. We don't just celebrate the fact that Hashem saved us, we celebrate with matzah. By the way, there's a very important custom that you're not supposed to have matzah a month before Pesach, and Dr. Bressman said that a month before Chanukah you shouldn't have any jelly donuts either. But I got a special dispensation.
Not for me.
Not from him. Anyway, so on Chanukah, the holiday is celebrated on the day of the victory because the victory itself is miraculous. Now, the Alter Rebbe, before I see what the Alter Rebbe says, just a caveat. The Alter Rebbe, when he explains an opinion, it doesn't mean that he is of that opinion. When he's talking in a Hasidic discourse, Hasidic discourses aren't halacha, and the Alter Rebbe explains many opinions. Like, for example, on Rosh Hashanah, the Alter Rebbe talks about different shapes of a shofar which are not kosher, and the opinions which say they are kosher, because although halacha only follows one opinion, but there is spiritual significance to the other opinions as well. So just because the Alter Rebbe says something in a Hasidic discourse about the date of when the miracle happens, the Alter Rebbe says that the miracle in war was on the 24th of Kislev. It does not mean that he actually halachically differs with the Rambam about the chronological order of the events, because he's talking in a Hasidic discourse and he's explaining the spiritual meaning of one opinion. Doesn't necessarily mean that he is of that opinion. Okay. So the Alter Rebbe does, however, he quotes the Meiri, and the Meiri says that the miracle of victory of war happens on the 24th of Kislev, and the celebration of that victory, the celebration isn't on the 24th of Kislev. It's not like Pesach, where the celebration is on the day when the God saves us. Instead, we are celebrating the day after the victory of war. Chanukah begins Chanukah when we rested after the war on the 25th of Kislev. Unlike the Rambam, who says that the victory wasn't on the 25th of Kislev and the rest on the 26th. The victory was on the 25th and the rest on the 26th, but the holiday begins on the 25th. The Meiri says the victory was on the 24th and the holiday begins on the day after the victory on the 25th.
But then when they make this, I want to have the miracle of the oil, since that was a direct miracle, and that was a spiritual, then wouldn't that be on the day again?
Okay, you're going somewhere. Hold on, you're going somewhere. Very good. Okay, before we go somewhere, let's just introduce something else. Someone commented to me yesterday that this isn't meant to be a class in Nigla, it's supposed to be a class in Chassidus, and there's a lot of Nigla we're going through over here. So let me just say one point in Chassidus before we go further about this subject. The Alter Rebbe writes in this Hasidic discourse that we're quoting from that the difference between the various holidays, we explain it one way, that it depends upon what's more miraculous. Is the method miraculous, and then we'll celebrate the method itself, or is the method not miraculous, therefore celebrating the result of the miracle? The author explains the various dates that are set for the holidays, whether they're on the day of the victory or the day after, according to Hasidus, a quite deeper perspective. The author says that when the revelation of Hashem, which is a source of anything that happens in this world, a yontif means that God revealed himself. That's a yontif. Hashem revealed himself. Every year on that yontif, Hashem reveals himself again, and in a greater way than ever before. So a yontif means revelation. So different kinds of revelation. The yontif could be in the day of the victory or the day after the victory. When the yontif is in the caliber of the holiday of Pesach, we're concerning Pesach, the Torah says, Nigla Haleim Melech Malcham Baruch Hu Golem. The King of all kings in his glory, and he himself redeemed us. As we say in the Agadah, not through a messenger, not through an angel. It was an incredible revelation. Because it was such an incredible revelation, it was beyond making a differentiation between our salvation and the demise of our enemies. It was beyond making a distinction between one event and the other, and therefore there is the holiday is celebrated simultaneously with the downfall of our enemies and our salvation. We don't have one day where we're winning the war and the next day where we're celebrating that. The same day of the downfall of our enemies is the day that we celebrate our salvation, because it comes from a level of godliness which is infinite, and from the level of God's infinity, there's no difference between the calamity that happens to our enemies and the if you use the word calamity, and our salvation, because it comes from a place that is infinite and beyond making a distinction between God's right hand of salvation, God's left hand of judgment. It comes from a place beyond that. It comes from the King of all kings, comes from God's infinite light. But when the salvation, when the victory of war and the holiday are 2 different days, that means that we're not talking about such a high, lofty revelation, and therefore there are 2 stages. There is one element of God's left hand, so to speak. There is the God's judgment of our enemies, and there's another thing that we were saved, and there are two different components, and that they're associated with 2 different days. You follow me, or no?
Sort of.
Sort of.
Sorry, I see the idea that a concealed miracle are in the left hand, and then revealed in the right. Is that what you're saying?
No. God's left hand is about justice,
yeah,
and about punishment.
Right.
So victory in war also means one side loses.
Yes.
So in the language of the Gemara, Nogel from Mitzrayim Rafu Yisrael, there was a plague to the Egyptians and there was salvation of the Jewish people. So are they 2 different things that happen in 2 different days? Are they associated with 2 different days? They may happen at the same time, because once you destroy one, you have the other, right? But is the content of what's going on, are there 2 different components to what's going on, or is one component? So from the perspective of infinity, there's no differentiation from one and the other. It's all the same. But from the perspective of a lower revelation of godliness, there are 2 different things happening. There is the destruction of
possible because of the war.
Right. So if the holiday is in the same day as the destruction, that indicates we're talking about a revelation which is infinite, and therefore they both happen on the same day. We celebrate the day of the victory.
Right.
But if it comes from a lower revelation of Hashem, then there are 2 different things that are going on. Day 1 is the victory, and day 2, day afterwards, is the day of the yontif. The yontif, the holiday begins, the right hand of Hashem begins after the destruction. There's a day of the destruction. If it's separate.
Got it.
So the Meiri, he says that the holiday of Chanukah begins the day after the downfall of our enemies, which sounds similar to Purim, right? Where they have the downfall of our enemies on the 14th and the 13th of Adar, and the celebration the day after. Unlike on Passover, where we have the revelation of Hashem and the downfall of our enemies on the same day.
Right.
But where we're going is like this. What we want to say is that the theme of what the Alter Rebbe says, that although he says that the victory happened on the 24th of Kislev, in a way, you could say that that there's still a holiday happening on the day of the miracle itself. It depends which miracle. The miracle of Chanukah does include the miracle, the victory of war. But the main miracle of Chanukah isn't the victory in war, it's the menorah. And that is a day when you saw the most open miracle of the whole holiday. You saw the revelation of Hashem in an even more vivid way than the victory in war. So there are two different miracles that happen at two different times. The victory in war happened on the 24th of Kislev. A different miracle happened on the 25th of Kislev. The miracle of the menorah is a different miracle. So it's not that by the story of Passover, we have two different events happening simultaneously. The Egyptians are being killed, the Jewish people are being saved simultaneously. And the Rambam and the Rambam's and that means that there's a high revelation. Okay. But here on Chanukah, we have two different events happening. There's two different events. It's not that we have two components of the same event. First, they are destroyed, then we are saved. It's not that it's two different components. First, we're talking about their destruction, then we're talking about our salvation. Rather, there are two completely distinct things going on. There's a victory of war, and then there's a miracle of the menorah.
Didn't you have to win the war to have the oil?
We did. So no, it's true. But the victory in war was a preparation for this lighting menorah. That's what the holiday is about. The holiday is about lighting menorah. That's the main component of the holiday. Hold on a second.
Okay.
According to the Meiri, although the victory in war is part of the miracle, but the main holiday is about the salvation of the Jewish religion. It's about the fact that we could practice as Jews. And the victory wasn't such an open miracle. It was a miracle, not as great a miracle as lighting the menorah. The victory in war was just a preparation for the main miracle, which was lighting the menorah. And therefore, when is there a holiday of Chanukah? The holiday isn't on the day of the victory. That's just a preparation for what Chanukah is about. The Chanukah is not about physical salvation anyways. It's about the spiritual salvation. That's what we're celebrating. We're celebrating that's why the Meiri says, why do we celebrate the 25th of Kislev? He says we're celebrating the Geula. It doesn't say the victory of war. It says the Geula. What's Geula mean? The spiritual salvation that we're able to light the menorah, that we're able to practice as Jews. We have our Yiddishkeit, we have our Judaism. According to the Rambam, the victory in war is something important unto itself. Although the Rambam holds that, like the Meiri, that the victory in war helps us keep our Judaism as well, and we're celebrating that too. But according to the Rambam, there's a distinct celebration just for the fact that we were saved. And therefore, it comes out that there are three, according to the Rambam, okay, forget the Rambam. So according to the Meiri, according to the Alter Rebbe, it's not that we're celebrating the day after the miracle. You hear? We're celebrating the day of the miracle. Just depends what miracle you're talking about. The miracle of the menorah, that's the miracle we're celebrating. The 25th of Kislev is the day of it's not the day of rest from the war. It's a day of the miracle of the menorah. So we are celebrating day one of Chanukah as the day one of the miracle, depending which miracle. The miracle of the freedom of religion and the freedom of lighting the menorah and the miracle of the menorah. According to the Rambam, there are actually three different things going on. There are three different kinds of holidays. We have a Purim kind of holiday, we have a Chanukah kind of holiday, and we have a Pesach kind of holiday. On Purim, you don't celebrate the day of victory, you celebrate the day after. On Chanukah, which has two components, the victory of war and the menorah, which happen at two different times. And on Pesach, both of those events, the destruction of the Egyptians and the salvation of the Jewish people, happened in the very same breath, in the very same they happened simultaneously, not just simultaneously, but they also happened in the same event, in the same one swoop, so to speak. Hashem destroyed the Egyptians and saved us.
At midnight, we left the next morning.
Right. So, according to what is explained in many places in Chassidus, the parameters of a holiday is again a day of revelation. So we could say that these three ways that Hashem gives us the Yantiv, the Purim model, the Chanukah model, and the Pesach model, correspond to three different ways that God reveals His holiness to us. On Purim, there was Hashem's revelation to us, predominantly connected to saving the Jewish people. Destroying Haman and winning the war was a preparation to save the Jewish people. That's how Hashem revealed Himself on Purim, the saving of the Jewish people. That's what the main thing was. Haman and the enemies were just a way to get there. On Chanukah, the victory itself was a revelation of Hashem's holiness, but not the same level of holiness as the menorah. On Pesach, the revelation of holiness of Hashem's light was so incredible that it was equal. It wasn't two different things. It was the salvation of the Jewish people and the destruction of the Egyptians, which even within the destruction of the Egyptians, there was a similar revelation as our salvation. On Purim, the salvation was the main thing. The destruction of our enemies was not the important thing. On Chanukah, there are two levels of revelation. There was one level of revelation of destruction of our enemies, and there's another revelation in the menorah. Two different levels of revelation. On Pesach, the revelation was equal in both areas. It was an infinite light of Hashem, and therefore it affected this infinite revelation caused two things to happen simultaneously.
Question.
Yeah.
These are all holidays which are 1 day or 2 days, but what happens when you get the things?
Hanukkah's 8 days.
What?
Hanukkah's-
Well, no, I understand what we're talking about. When it begins. But what about Sichos? How does that fit into this model?
Sukkot is
This is the first day.
Sukkot is a unique holiday. It's not about salvation. Sukkot is a different subject. It's about Hashem just showing love for us and giving us air conditioning. All right. Okay, we'll stop here. A good Yontif, Yontan, a good Yontif Dave, Yontif Zev, Yontif